Let me ask you a question. Do you prefer an orchard or a food forest? There are differences, and you may favor one over the other depending on your needs. We're going to talk about that today. There are differences between an orchard and a food forest. And right here, what you're looking at is an orchard. Blueberries blowing up. We got a peach tree over here blowing up, doing great, but there is a demarcation point. So we have orchards flanking each side of the road, and then when you come down to this corner post over here, bam, we roll into a food forest. Now there are distinct differences, and depending on what your goals are or your time availability, you might favor one over the other, or it may be like us where you may actually favor this orchard as opposed to this food forest. Now, let's talk about the benefits and the liabilities of both. Let's talk about the benefits and the liabilities of an orchard. Right over here, we got a pear that I'm training. So that required a little bit of work out of me. Also, we got everything you can imagine. We got raspberries, strawberries underneath. We got rosemary, oregano, thyme, you name it. Everything is hopping and popping out of here. And look, my goodness, man, look at that oregano and the thyme, this English thyme, all this other stuff going. But here's the deal. It requires a fair amount of work to maintain this stuff to a point. Now, when you do a permaculture orchard, it doesn't require anywhere near as much as it's going to require in your standard orchard. Because basically we put it on autopilot, we go out here, we intervene when we have to. Now, the benefits of an orchard is that because it is more manicured, yeah, you're going to get a better yield out of it. But you may be like so many other people on this planet that have more time than money. So that may benefit you. In the other case where you have more money than time, you basically do a little flow chart as to what works out best for you. But this may not be what you need. You may not want to go out there and have to weed out some of these things, like some of that goldenrod over there that's popping up in there. That may not be what you want to deal with. So once again, the benefit is much higher yield. The liability requires much out of you. Let's talk about the virtues and the liabilities of a food forest. Because right here at the demarcation point of my food forest, as you can see, things aren't as manicured, but it doesn't mean that it's not productive. Like, for example, look at this blueberry blowing up right here, and I got goldenrod jumping up out of it. Now, I could leave it there, but this stuff usually comes out pretty easy. So we'll just throw it over here for the donkeys. But as we walk through a food forest, here's what you're going to find out when you do this sort of thing. There is minimal involvement by me. Now, when you're first starting out, this one is about a little more than 3 years on. And it's honestly to the point where we could literally walk away from it. I mean, you don't start off that way, but you get there. The beauty about it, and sometimes the frustration, is that it is on autopilot. It is that classic example of getting more out of a system than it requires of you. So if you're a person that is limited on time and you want to just, like, even down here, look at this. I mean, these blueberries are absolutely blowing up. And they didn't the last 2 years down here. Look at over here, another blueberry bush, and there's been almost no intervention out here. Now, you're going to have things that you don't necessarily want coming up at first. More goldenrod. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're a permaculture designer, but if you like things a little more manicured, a food forest maybe ain't for you. Once again, you're going to get a much lower yield because as you go around and you look at all the trees around here, they don't have anywhere near the fruit sets that I have up there in my orchard. But that may be an actual blessing for you. Let's say you're a person who's doing a 9 to 5. Let's say you have a job that requires so much out of you. Sorry if I'm not looking at the camera, y'all. I'm literally stepping on my food. I mean, strawberries everywhere. And in other places, you'll find out that our strawberries are actually our ground cover. But the cool thing is because it is a food forest, I don't have to be out here all the time. Once it's off and running, and yeah, it looks a little bit rough. It doesn't look like everything else, but once again, this is also a future demonstration site in addition to a place where we can get a whole lot of food. And by the way, we got about 100 gallons of strawberries last year. Now, our strawberries aren't ready. They're just now getting ready to rock and roll. But here's the beauty of it. If you have very little time, and most of us these days are kind of limited on time, a food forest may be right for you. And then think about it. There's other versions of a food forest. I mean, look at this. Just walking through here, and it's not quite ready, but you get the point. Wow, that's very sweet. But we'll leave it for something else. If we get down here and look, this is an area where we got a lot of duff on the ground. Strawberries everywhere, and we're going to probably almost certainly have another bumper crop of strawberries that we didn't have to work for. All the fruit trees like this peach. No, it's not as robust as the ones up in the orchard, but who cares? I'm not putting in any work. I mean, we still got peaches coming off of here. They're not wonderful because these trees are not as maintenance, but it might be what suits your needs, especially if you got so many other operations going on. Let's say you're a farmer like me, or a permaculture farmer, where you got so many different enterprises, whether it be chickens, your ruminants, sometimes pigs, whatever the case may be. You know, you got all this stuff that you need to manage, and you just simply don't have the time. Once again, the blessing is it requires less out of you, but you get less of a yield out of it. So it is one of those systems, like I said, that gives out more than it requires. So that might very well be what you need. Now let's talk about another kind of food forest that I might have actually invented. Here's another idea you might want to consider, especially in these times. One of the awesome, beautiful benefits of a food forest is that you can turn it into what I call a tactical food forest. It doesn't even have to start that way, but you can make it that way. For example, on the edge of mine, there's a road down there. And anybody driving on that road right now can't even tell that there's a food forest over here, because I got some cherry, I got some other trees that I let grow wild on this side. Got some multiflora rose, which ordinarily in the wrong spot, it might actually be a liability. But out here, believe me, somebody's going to think twice about walking over that. We got other vines, thorns, thistles. We got honeysuckle over there. And we got all these things that the passerby won't necessarily know what I got going over here, okay? Here's another cool thing about a food forest. As wild as it is, it might, in these times, now, take of this what you want. Maybe you want to grow some things out there that are highly medicinal that the powers that shouldn't be wouldn't necessarily approve of. I mean, that's up to you. I'm not saying I'd do it, but I'm not saying I wouldn't either. So that's another thing to consider. Food forest, orchards, and then the cool thing about a food forest is that you can break, it doesn't have to be in lines and roads, and neither does an orchard for that matter. But you can break up the outline, because over here, as you can see, there's still things I need to do to maybe make my things a little more discreet, and I'm working on that. But you can break up the outline just by putting natural trees and nuisances on the outside perimeter. Folks, this works like a plan. And we're honestly taking to bear a lot of the stuff that you're going to find in, let's say, military doctrine. As a U.S. Army sapper, y'all, I kind of know a little bit about some of that stuff when it comes to security. Another thing about a food forest, look at what we got growing up out of here. Yeah, that's that nasty Chinese silvergrass that we hate. So you're always going to have those things pop up out of here that you don't necessarily want. Now, what I'm noticing and looking at this is telling me, okay, well, this is one area that I know is still highly bacterial, because this wouldn't even be here if it were fungal enough. So all I'll do is come through with a weed eater, cover it up with some cardboard, put a bunch of mulch on it, and drive on. So there are pluses and minuses depending on what it is you're looking to do out there. And you got to take the right, you hear me say it all the time, you got to take the right dog to the hunt. Now, I'm going to kind of step over, and not everything's going to make it, okay? We got a cherry over here that, you know, we've had trouble with cherries out here. It's strange because we got all kinds of natural cherry growing everywhere. You can grow a lot of medicine out here, and we got a lot of it right down in the food forest. Let's not forget about things like your nitrogen fixers, which are, I didn't even plant this one, I don't think. it popped up in the middle of here and it's in my orchard. Now, the beauty of this is that if we just copy what nature's doing, this nitrogen fixer is not only taking atmospheric nitrogen, putting it down into the soil. I'm going to very simplify this. Not only is it putting it down in the soil to the benefit of this apple and to these other trees around it, the crab apple over there, and then some of the others that we have, not only is it taking that nitrogen, putting it down into the soil for the benefit of those other trees, all of the beneficial bugs that would protect my fruit trees want to reside half the time in these nitrogen fixtures. So we put nitrogen fixtures at every level: the overstory, the understory, the shrub, the vine, you get it. I mean, all of it's in there. And you can easily situate those things in your food forest. And also it's going to help break up the outline. In fact, because this tree, like a black locust like this, is so robust, it might be one of the ones I want to put on the edge over there. Okay, some of the maybe edible nitrogen fixing shrubs that would easily break up the outline over there to where nobody necessarily has to know what you got going on. There's a lot of things we got going on around here in terms of tactical food forest that maybe I don't want to tell everybody about. So I ain't going to tell all of you either. Think about all the medicine you can be growing out there, not only for you, but for your animals, like marshmallow, echinacea, hyssop, all those things. I mean, and then of course we got rosemary, thyme, oregano. A lot of people do some pretty awesome stuff with oregano oil that almost seems magical. So we're growing the fruit, we're growing our berries, we're growing our medicine, we're growing things that benefit us and everything else around us. Sorry, y'all, if it looks like I'm walking through like I'm some stealth fighter in a movie, but I'm trying not to step all over my food. Yarrow coming up out of here. And here it is. We got other things where, like this blueberry that's a little bit laid over right now. Here's the thing. It's a food forest. I don't have to worry about it. The only real maintenance I plan on doing is if we got a problem child, like let's say this peach over here, because this thing is on the edge, we've had a little bit of deer issues, and then of course put an end to all that when I slap that bone sauce on this stuff. And then also I'm putting the bone sauce on all the perimeter around here so the deer that I don't want fooling around in here, they don't come over here. So we can still have the benefit of the tactical nature of a food forest, still have the benefit of all the wonderful things that it can produce, but also keep away the passersby and of course the deer that we want to titrate in and out of this place if we even want them at all. So we'll just move on down here. And it seems wild. It looks disordered. But here we got another nitrogen fixer popping up out of here. Over there we got nut trees. We got all these different things that by and large, the regular everyday passerby will just kind of look at it and not even pay attention to it. Because look at this over here. Because it's not manicured, now I got to get rid of this tag. Because it's not manicured and nothing else is, it doesn't look like your standard orchard. Nothing's trained down. Everything's just kind of growing the way it does, and we're just going to let it do that. So, I mean, good night, y'all. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to swing around here. I can't step on this English thyme over here. Over here, we got a hugelkultur mound. And what do we got growing up out of it? Oh, heavens to Murgatroyd, one of Michelle's favorites, horseradish. I haven't done a whole lot with it. Now, from a tactical standpoint, could that be used as a fighting position? If you had to, covering your major avenues of approach, if you had to. Got an intermittent pond down here that's shaped like a heart. Okay, could that also be used as an LPOP, listening post, observation post? Could it be used to capture water, which it does? I mean, there are multiple functions for everything else around here. So down in here, we got a fig that you can barely see popping up out of there. And we got other nitrogen fixtures. And even on the outside of our property, I'm growing fruit there. Even on the outside of your property, y'all, you can absolutely be growing things for the benefit of, let's say, the passersby, like I have out here. But there could also be that demarcation point, which is obviously made when you got a fence covering your perimeter and you got high voltage signs, so somebody just doesn't come up here and get Kentucky fried. So, over here, food forest. Up the way, orchard. And you can have both or one or the other or cut and paste. I mean, there's no set way of having to do any of this stuff, y'all. It all comes down to what serves you best. And frankly, these days, what your time will allow. So there are benefits to an orchard. There are benefits to a food forest, and you got to love them all. All right, I'm going to wait a little bit later in the season before I do a full-fledged tour of what we got going out here, because I want you to see it in all of its glory when it's off and running, a food forest. And then you can make up your mind as to whether you want one or the other. All right, y'all, thank you so much for your support. If you need any of the bone sauce I talked about that we got on these trees, go check us out at the website. Comfrey, it's a fantastic time to plant that magnificent plant everywhere you want right now. If you need anything else, y'all, we got it down below, whether it's Redemption Shield, Heaven's Harvest, freeze dryers, I mean, you name it. We got it all down below. We thank you all for your support. Till next time, this is Billy on behalf of Michelle from Permapastures Farm, where permaculture is my passion, y'all, and this is the reason why.